Welcome back to Anime Channel. Today I will show you a 2018 Japanese shonen anime titled Megalo Box. Megalo Box is set in late 20th century Japan where individuals with citizenship reside in the administrative area, while those without citizenship dwell in the restricted area, which is located on the fringes of the administrative area. Megalo boxing is a prominent sport in the Megalo Box world that is similar to boxing, except that the boxers fight while wearing metal exoskeletons known as gears, which make their strikes far more dangerous. The plot revolves around a fighter only known by his ring name Junk Dog, who competes in restricted area fight clubs in scheduled battles. He nearly collides with Yukiko Shirato, the CEO of Shirato Group, one evening while riding his motorbike in the administrative area. Junk Dog chooses a battle with her bodyguard Yuuri, who also happens to be the Megalo boxing champion. Yukiko breaks up the fight, but Yuuri goes in search of Junk Dog and finds him in a fight club. After easily defeating the less experienced fighter, Yuuri challenges Junk Dog to a rematch in the Megalo boxing competition, Megalonia, for which Junk Dog would need to be at the top of the official Megalo Box rankings and possess the necessary citizenship ID in order to enter the rankings in the first place. The two are granted 3 months to reach their objective of climbing to the top of the Megalo Box rankings in order to have a shot at competing in Megalonia. After Junk Dog's instructor Gansaku Nanbu convinces the mafia leader Fujimaki to forge Junk Dog an ID under the name Joe. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Under the direction of Gansaku Nanbu, Junk Dog, a Megalo Boxer, competes in predetermined battles in an illegal underground ring. He yearns for a genuine altercation without a clear winner. He nearly collided with Yukiko Shirato, the leader of the Shirato Group, which is in charge of organizing the Megalonia tournament, with his motorcycle one evening. Junk Dog declines Yukiko's offer to pay him back, yelling at her that the Megalonia competition is not the real Megalo boxing. Yuuri, Yukiko's bodyguard, feels insulted by Junk Dog's disdain for his boss. Junk Dog challenges him to a battle in an effort to experience authentic Megalo boxing. Yukiko dissuades the combat from occurring despite Yuuri's potent aura energizing Junk Dog. Later on, Yuuri enters the ring in place of Junk Dog, who was about to face his most recent opponent. The fact that Yuuri, the reigning Megalo Box champion, is present without Yukiko's knowledge shocks the crowd. Junk Dog, who persists on battling Yuuri with his own expertise, punches Nanbu out of the ring when she attempts to halt the battle. Nanbu is powerless to halt the bout between Junk Dog and Yuuri since the leader of the subterranean ring has permitted it to take place. Yuuri disadvantages himself by fighting with only one hand, but Junk Dog pushes him to fight with both hands. Nonetheless, Junk Dog gets defeated in the first round. Junk Dog gets up just as Yuuri is about to leave and informs him that he is still not pleased. Yuuri advises him that if he wants to fight him again, he must first work his way up to a true Megalonia bout. Junk Dog is riding his motorcycle when he comes upon a sign that reads, "It's a lovely district life, not for the average Joe," which encourages him to visit Megalonia. Nanbu informs him that he would need a citizenship ID to participate in the competition. Junk Dog begins to resist Nanbu and fights with his full power, easily defeating his opponent in a bout he was intended to lose. This lands Nanbu in problems with the subterranean ring's crime leader Fujimaki. Nanbu bargains his way out of the situation by convincing Fujimaki that he'll pay him back after Junk Dog wins Megalonia. Fujimaki agrees and makes a falsified ID for Junk Dog, who names himself Joe. Nanbu adds Joe to the Megalo Box rankings, where he begins at the absolute bottom at 257th position. He intends to have Joe battle the most difficult opponents that the rankings will allow so that he can advance to the top bracket in as few as 5 fights. When the two go to Goskino factory to upgrade their equipment, they see the shopkeeper has a Shirato Group composite titanium prototype gear in the back room. Sashio and his buddies walk in with a bag of stolen cameras, which they trade for red candy, a form of narcotic. Sashio realizes he doesn't have enough red candy and assaults the shopkeeper, who draws a knife on the youngster. Joe intervenes but is kicked out by former Megalo Boxer Potemkin Higashi. Nanbu intends to have Joe battle Shark Samejima, the 185th rated Megalo Boxer, and the two will begin training. Sashio stops their training and requests that they transport him to Megalonia. When they refuse, he breaks into Guskino and steals the prototype, only to be apprehended. Joe, Nanbu, and the other youngsters rush to his aid. Joe tries to battle Higashi while wearing the prototype, but it comes apart, and he defeats him without it. Joe and Nanbu decide to bring Sashio along. Joe enters the ring for his first professional encounter against Shark Samejima, but surprises the entire crowd by not wearing any protective gear, earning the nickname Gearless Joe. This is all part of Nanbu's ploy to draw attention to himself. Joe is knocked down in the opening round, which throws him off balance, but he gets back up at the 9th count, just as the round finishes. In the second round, Shark loses his cool and fouls Joe, who spends the remainder of the round evading him. During the intermission, Sashio chastises both Joe and Nanbu, allowing the two to focus and sort out their objectives. Joe KOs Shark in the third round with his footwork. After some time, Joe wins 2 more battles and rises to rank 102, establishing a reputation for himself and attracting Yukiko's attention. Nanbu pays a visit to an old acquaintance to meet Joe's next opponent, rank 17, but is surprised to discover that the challenger is someone from his past with a half-burned face. Nanbu's attempt to scout a high-ranking opponent for Joe's next battle gets him the 17th ranked boxer, his ex-student Aragaki, who fell out with Nanbu after losing his legs in an explosive trap during a military deployment. When Aragaki returned to the gym, he was saddened to discover it derelict and later dismantled, and in his despair he nearly killed himself. Aragaki informs Nanbu that he aims to destroy Joe as retaliation for breaking a commitment that the gym will always be his home. Sashio investigates Aragaki's boxing record since joined Megalo 3 years ago and discovers an uninterrupted streak of violent victories that leave his opponents in severe condition. Nanbu wants to avoid the battle out of fear of Aragaki's revenge against Joe, but Joe refuses to call it off. The battle begins, and Joe and Aragaki appear fairly matched at first, but a beautifully placed hit from Aragaki in the middle of round 1 knocks Joe out as the count nears 10. Joe survives the 9th count and continues to battle Aragaki. Nanbu nearly throws in the towel, feeling the fight is over, but Joe stops him and begins to fight back by evenly spreading his weight like Nanbu instructed him. Recognizing the method, Aragaki recalls his time under Nanbu and begins to break down as his rage overpowers him. Joe strikes a strong blow that nearly knocks Aragaki down. The battle goes into the 4th round, with both competitors taking multiple hits, but it stops before the 5th round can begin, owing to Aragaki's forfeit. Nanbu reconciles with Aragaki in the locker room, and Aragaki discloses that he risked becoming bedridden due to the damage to his leg implant sustained during the battle, and that this was his final Megalo boxing contest. He returns to Nanbu a failed betting slip that Nanbu gave Aragaki as a good luck charm and which had prevented him from committing suicide. He instructs Nanbu to deliver it to Joe. Yukiko formally introduces Glenn Burroughs as Megalonia's 3rd card. Mikio Shirato informs Yuuri that the general public is more interested in Gearless Joe than the other boxers, but he has a plan to prevent Joe from reaching Megalonia. Joe's popularity grows, but he still has a little chance of getting picked for Megalonia. Mikio defeats Sugar R. Hill and announces to the fans that he will face Joe next. The Shirato Group's executive committee begs Yukiko to place Mikio in Megalonia, but she has her own purpose and does not want her brother to progress. Mikio informs Yukiko that he knows she set up his battle with Sugar in the hopes of knocking him out, and that she was also planned on setting him up to fight Joe for the same purpose. Mikio meets with Joe before their match and admits that he knows he's an illegal underground fighter with a phony ID and threatens to expose him if he goes in the ring. Nanbu stops Joe from punching Mikio and knocks him unconscious. Mikio wins by default since Joe does not enter the arena, and he swears to reclaim the Shirato Group from Yukiko. The Shirato Group intends to formally declare Mikio as Megalonia's last finalist when he wins through forfeit. Nanbu resolves to beg Fujimaki for information on Mikio in order to push him into a rematch with Joe, after finding that Mikio has yet to divulge Joe's secret to the public. Fujimaki informs Nanbu that someone inquired about Joe's false ID but never received the complete story from him or his guise, causing Nanbu to believe Mikio duped him with half-truths. Nanbu interrogates a former gear developer who reveals that Mikio directed a team to construct a gear that could reach the gear of other fighters in an attempt to beat the team developing the integrated gear that Yuuri currently wears on his arms. With this information, Nanbu knows Joe has a chance and he tries every trick in the book to persuade Yukiko to request for a rematch. Yukiko, on the other hand, is suspicious of Nanbu and confines him to a room. That night, at the event to announce Megalonia's last 4 contestants, Joe storms the scene on his bike and insists that Mikio fight him fairly. Yukiko rips the 4th Megalonia ticket in 2, giving 1/2 to Joe and 1/2 to Mikio, and announces that whoever wins their rematch earns the last slot. Mikio is crushing Joe in their formal rematch, as Mikio's gear, Ace, has been greatly enhanced from previously, allowing Mikio to understand Joe's attacks and counter them in seconds. Yuuri observes Mikio upgrading his equipment in order to battle him, while a flashback reveals Mikio utilizing medications to boost his synchronization with Ace to a greater degree than usual. Joe chooses to relax his guard entirely after none of his combinations succeed, confounding Ace's programming and leaving Mikio unable to finish Joe out. Further memories reveal Mikio doubting whether his boxing talent is his or Ace's. Joe chooses to place his entire wager on a counterpunch. Nanbu anticipates a right straight from Mikio, but Mikio punches with his left. Joe, on the other hand, responds instantly with an uppercut, knocking Mikio out and earning his place in Megalonia. Nanbu slips out of Joe's team Nowhere's post-fight celebration to meet with Fujimaki, while Joe's team Nowhere celebrates on their boat. Nanbu informs Joe that the true bet he made with Fujimaki was to reach Megalonia and then chuck the match if he reached the quarterfinals. Joe is enraged that Nanbu still wants him to fight to rescue himself and hits him before fleeing on his bike. Sashio overhears their quarrel and flees, feeling deceived by Nanbu. Nanbu is told by Fujimaki that if Joe does not throw the battle, he would murder all 3 of them. Later, Nanbu finds Sashio and informs him of what he has discovered about his past. Sashio's father created the prototype gear that Yuuri wears, but his research was taken by a member of the Shirato organization, and the man himself was subsequently found dead. Nanbu brings Sashio to Yukiko's home and offers him a chance at vengeance, but Sashio refuses. So Nanbu gets Yukiko to take custody of Sashio to protect him from Fujimaki. Later that night, when Yukiko investigates Sashio's father, Yuuri overcomes Pepe Iglesias to advance to the final round of Megalonia. Joe and Yuuri discuss their reasons outside the arena, while a drunken Nanbu wanders about the boat, recalling Fujimaki telling him about the scorpion and the frog. Fujimaki's men accompany Nanbu to the arena, where Joe will face Glenn Burroughs in their semi-final bout. Meanwhile, Sashio refuses to attend the fight because he believes Joe and Nanbu both abandon him for a stage bout. As Joe enters alone in the ring, wearing his old gear following a visit to his old mechanic buddy, Nanbu is led to the luxurious suite where Fujimaki is watching the battle. In the 3rd round, Nanbu directs Joe to dive, but Fujimaki maintains a careful eye on Nanbu, chastising him for behaving like a true coach even though he's going to make him chuck the fight. Nanbu thinks that this deed would pay off their debt, but Fujimaki claims that Joe will be under his control for the rest of his life. Nanbu attempts to inspire Joe to fight, but his gear comes off and he collapses to the mat as he is beaten in the corner. Sashio suddenly emerges at ringside, screaming at Joe not to give up. Joe rises up and defeats Burroughs with a counterpunch, knocking him out. Meanwhile, in the suite, Nanbu commences a battle with Fujimaki's guys. Nanbu grabs a knife as one of them aims a pistol at him. Meanwhile, Joe and Sashio are celebrating their triumph before racing to Nanbu's suite, where he has slashed his remaining eye out as payment to Fujimaki. Fujimaki, impressed by the show, agrees to release the 3. Yukiko obtains a deal with the military for her company's integrated gear research, but she is surprised to learn that Yuuri has chosen to have his own gear removed. Yuuri declares that he wishes to confront Joe on equal footing without the use of any gear. A newly blind Nanbu encourages Aragaki to assist him in training Joe for the bout, utilizing his better hearing to evaluate Joe's form. Meanwhile, Yuuri pays a visit to Mikio's hut in the woods to have his gear surgically removed. Later, Yukiko discovers that Joe's ID badge is a forgery and has a cause to disqualify him from the competition, but she decides to pay a visit to Yuuri instead. Yuuri gradually recovers from the surgery's discomfort, and when Yukiko offers sedation, he declines, preferring to combat the pain on his own. Later, Yukiko pays Joe a visit on the riverside, informing him that she is aware of the bogus ID. But she will not halt this battle with Yuuri since she cannot comprehend what motivated Yuuri to take such dramatic measures to fight him. Joe and Yuuri rematch in the Megalonia finals, with Yuuri entering the ring without his gear to face Joe on equal terms. Meanwhile, Yukiko is dealing with military clients who want to alter her gear for weapon development. But she is opposed to the notion. Despite the fact that his endurance has been drained by his recovery from surgery, Yuuri continues to match Joe blow for blow until he is unable to sip from his own water bottle after 12 rounds. Both boxers put everything on one last strike in the 13th round. The narrative abruptly turns to a year later, when Nanbu has founded a new boxing facility named Gym Nowhere. The new Megalonia tournament is about to begin and the previous champion has vacated their title. Yuuri is shown in a wheelchair, and Joe subsequently rides his bike past the gym to deliver a couple goods. The final title card indicates that Gearless Joe won the championship fight through the knockout round a year ago. And that is all about this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to stay up to date with such interesting movie recaps here at Anime Channel.